once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books a crease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating, then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there and nothing more." Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word "Lenore." Merely this and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what that is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more." The Raven is a worldwide famous poem written by Edgar Allan Poe. In my analysis, I've chosen to divide the analysis in different parts so it makes more sense. I'll start off by telling something about the two most important themes. And I'm going to start off with the essential theme, love. Not only love, but lost love. Because the whole poem is based on lost love, which is the exactly same theme for the song My Fallen Angel by My Dying Bride. This lost theme gives the effect of sadness and scariness and mysteriousness. But the narrator loves the woman named Lenore. The strong love that is lost is what makes the poem this sad, because Poe wants to create a pretty depressing look at love, because the narrator only wants one thing in this world, which is the thing that he absolutely can't have, which is Lenore. So it's the whole poem is created by this depressing, sad look on love. An important quote to this theme is, "From my books, decrees of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore." This quote is from the second verse in the poem, which means that we already know about Lenore very early in the poem, and with that we know that Lenore must be very important to the narrator and to the whole poem itself. So another theme could be the combination between sorrow and madness. Because the narrator is definitely sad about his loss, but by using the same quote as I used with the theme with love, it can just appear very different with this perspective. Because the question is the narrative sorrowful Lenore sad and beautiful, or is it actually turning into being totally like madness? And talking with the bird is definitely strange, but if we just forget about that for a moment, then if we look into the text and we try to find a deeper meaning, it could be that Poe wants to tell us that you can become mad or crazy because of your sorrow. So the bird could very well be a part of the narrator himself, um, the part that is so deeply depressed and filled with sorrow and lost hope. Um, in The Telltale Heart, also by Edgar Allan Poe, craziness and madness is also a theme, although it's much more clear in The Telltale Heart than in The Raven, because in The Raven we must search for deeper meaning to figure out if the narrator is mad or if he's just sad or how he's feeling. If we move on to the pragmatic reading, then I'm going to start off with the setting. In the very first line in the poem, we're told that it is midnight and that it's in the bleak December. Um, and therefore we know that it must be very cold and dark outside. So Poe definitely wants to create a mysterious and scary setting just right from the start, and therefore create an atmosphere at the beginning of the poem. And not much else is being said about the location, so it gives the reader the possibility to imagine for itself if we're in a wood or a small town and so on. Um, well, moving on to the atmosphere. The Raven is not a terrifying horror poem. It is not a poem where you feel scared to death. Poe's intention with this poem is to make the readers feel a much stronger feeling than scared. Poe creates a specific atmosphere. It simply makes you feel kind of sad, which is Poe's intention. He talks about death, but Poe wants to make sure that the reader can relate to that pain. And the saddest thing you can lose is your true love. So, therefore, it becomes the death of a beautiful woman. Um, and beyond that, the poem is really organized. So the rhyming words is part of what makes the poem this interesting to read and what creates the a tense and mysterious atmosphere. So the poem rhymes, and that makes the reader want to read more and more of the poem. You feel like you're getting dragged into the poem, and the pace of the poem is quite slow, so it gives the reader time to think and wonder about the words in the poem. Um, and it's sort of like the same way with the poem The Nightmare Lake, because there in that poem the writer uses a lot of adjectives and really works with the different details to make the poem interesting to read. Um, and it definitely creates this same really mysterious atmosphere. Um, so yeah, something about the title. Well, the title is pretty basic. Since the poem is about a raven, then it's like it makes good sense to call the raven. To call the poem the Raven. But Poe had other options. He could have called it Nevermore or Lenore, but I don't think that Poe named the poem Raven just random, because first of all it prepares us for what's coming and is like giving us a little hint about the big event in this poem. And also the raven doesn't show up before line 38. So in that time it makes us wonder what the title refers to. And also, more important, the title focuses our attention completely on the bird, because there are other things happening in this poem, but the title puts the raven at the head of the pack, and it gives us more reason to wonder what this bird is, where it comes from, and what it might represent. So, let's talk about the raven. The raven can be referencing a couple of different mythological traditions. In Norse myth, Odin has got two ravens named Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. And these two ravens, they flew around and gave Odin information about what was going on. And then in the raven, the narrator's bird, gives him some information too, but it's just not at all the good kind. Because the narrator is trying to forget about Lenore, but all the raven does is to fill his head with thoughts and memories of Lenore. Also, the raven is saying nevermore, but our narrator is saying the opposite, forevermore, at the beginning of the poem. But at the end, the bird and the narrator are both saying nevermore in the last verse, where he says that his soul shall be lifted nevermore. So it's like the raven and the narrator could be, again, the same person, but the bird is the depressing and deeply, very, very sad part of the narrator. And at the end, it might be that the bird has won over the more positive side of the narrator. So, also in the Telltale Heart, it focuses towards the eye, or at the eye, and the eye is what makes the poem mysterious. And both the eye and the raven have two huge meanings to the different texts, and they both have huge impacts on different narrators. So let's talk a bit about Lenore. Well, we know that Lenore is important to the narrator, and Lenore appears in his thoughts nearly through the whole poem. And as I've mentioned in the beginning, the narrator's love for Lenore is very deep. But perhaps love isn't what the narrator is feeling with Lenore. Maybe it's more like an obsession. And I have a quote here to support it. But whose velvet violet lining with the lamp glide floating o'er she shall press, never more. And now this is maybe the moment when his love starts to look a little stranger, and maybe more like an obsession. Because it's cute that sweet that he can hear her name, maybe a little scary, in the wind, but when he sees like his love in a couch cushion, it's starting to be a little more ridiculous. And maybe Poe wants us to see that this guy's grief is maybe going a little too far. And maybe you can go totally crazy when you just constantly think about your sorrow and your loss. And well, the raven, the poem Raven, can definitely be connected to our course in English, because our course, Gothic Romanticism and horror, has many different things in it. Like, it's both like gothic and black and very scary, but also it's more like spirits and mystery, and like it creates different atmospheres, and that is more what this poem is about. It's about the depressing but also romantic part, because that is the beauty of this chorus, is that some people see these things as terrifying and just gross in some kind of way, but others think that this is just the most beautiful text or poem that's have ever been written. And it's like it just it gets us all so emotional, because some people feel so sad and others think that, damn, this is just really good. Like, it's a good text, there's so much that this text says. And well, I just think that this also, it can be connected to the romanticism, with the man and the nature. With the romanticism, where is the idea that nature is purity and that we should go back to nature, which also can be connected to this raven. But I think that the most important thing about our course and this raven is the depressing, but at the same time romantic. But because the essential thing about this poem is that he has lost his love, whoever it might be, sister, a lover, wife, but it's just he's going crazy over her, and it makes some people so sad, and other people think that this is just so good written. And I think that is just the beauty of this poem.